going to make two different kinds of kubbeh soup. One, we're basically going to be making the kubbehs, which we'll explain what they are in a second. We're going to be making one kind of kubbeh, and it's going to be going in two different kinds of soup. One kind of soup is called kubbeh selek, which is beets. It's a soup that is red, and it has beets inside of it as well, that they get really, really good when they're cooked in the soup.
Yeah, same thing. I can't get rid of my video preview.
That is one. And the other kind of soup that we're going to be making is called kubbeh chamusta. Chamusta, in Hebrew, there's a word called chamutz. It means sour. And the chamusta soup is, it's a kind of, it's kubbeh that's in this like lemony kind of soup with greens in it that it's really, really good. So those are the two kinds we're going to be making.
I think we have like at least 7-8 kinds of kubbeh.
There are tons of kubbeh, yeah. So kubbeh, what it basically is it's like kind of a, I guess kind of a matzo ball. People would kill me for saying that, but that's what it looks like from the outside. It's kind of a matzo ball that's filled with meat, but the dough on the outside is made out of semolina or farina. Here is what it looks like. This is called solet in Hebrew. And I was really excited when I found it in HEB a few months ago. We could start making kubbeh with it. And there are two kinds of kubbeh. Some people make it in soup and some people fry it. The fried kubbeh, the dough is made a little bit differently with some other things as well. I've never tried making that one before, but we like the soup kind better anyway. So
maybe if you're like in a wedding in Israel or somewhere, yeah. So that's like a really famous Kabbalah in the buffet before the wedding. So like it's a kubbeh, fried kubbeh.
Yeah.
With
every wedding. So what we're going to do is first we're going to make the base for the soups. We're going to do them both at the same time. Then we're going to make the dough for the kubbeh because it has to sit for a little bit to kind of get sticky enough to use. And then after that, we're going to start making the meat and we're going to put it all together. And it sounds like a long time, but you'll see it goes pretty quickly. And altogether, while we're talking about all this, we're going to talk a little bit about the history of where it came from and how it became so popular in Israel, even among Ashkenazi Jews like ourselves. So yeah. So first, what we have here, we'll show you the table, what it looks like. Our table here is all set up. We have beets, we have onions chopped up, we have different vegetables. These are all going to be for the base of the soup. We have ground beef. We have two different pots. We have, hang on, we have spinach.
Garlic.
We have lots of garlic, different spices, and
we don't even leave the meeting.
What did you say?
Sorry.
Sorry.
So what we're going to do is we're going to take both of our pots over here. We're going to take both of the pots over here. Great. All right. Excellent. Okay. We have two pots right over here. We're going to take one pot and we're going to, in both pots, we're going to start off with onions. That's the best base of everything.
So we cut the onion like one like 2 quarters and one like really, really small that will be for later to fry it with the beef.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry?
So we have onions over here. And in one pot, in this pot right over here, we're going to be making the kubbeh selek, the beet kubbeh. So we have our beets right over here. They're just peeled and chopped up. You don't have to roast them before. You don't have to make them before. They're really very simple. You just take it, put it like that, and you put in the beets into the pot. Actually, the beets that we have were really, really big. So in the little pot that I'm using, I'm not even going to make a whole one. Since we're not that many people in our house here, we're not going to be making giant pots of kubbeh like we usually make. We're going to be doing it a little bit differently. Okay, thank you. We're going to be doing it a little bit differently. So we have onions, we have beets, and in this pot also we're going to put carrots and also some celery. So that is the base for this pot right over here for this soup.
And Robbie, don't worry, you will also like keep it on.
Here we have the second pot. All we have here so far is onions. What we're going to add in this pot is a whole zucchini that's cut up. We're going to put this one in right over here. And we're going to add the rest of the carrots and celery. Pot over here. So we have our 2 pots ready, and what we're going to add in both pots also are
garlic,
whole peel cloves of garlic. We're going to add a few in each pot. Thank you. Now we're going to take a little bit of olive oil. We're going to just pour a little in each pot. Pour a little bit in each one. And we're going to give each one a little mix. We're going to give each pot a mix, and we are going to now put them on the stove. And we're not adding water yet to the pots. We are going to like fry them a little bit to get the vegetables to give more of a flavor and so that they also cook quicker afterwards. So
move to the stove.
We are putting them on the stove right over here. And just turning on the flame. So while these sit here now, we're going to start making the rest of the other part of our. Okay. Okay. So just a little bit about Kubbeh. We said what it is like this kind of dough that's filled, this special dough that it's filled with meat and spices and other things. And it is, so Kubbeh, it's from Africa, all different countries there. Each country kind of has their own, they have their own special Kubbeh soup, specifically the ones that we're making. The Kubbeh Selek, the beet soup, it's originally from Iraq. And the Kubbeh Hamusta, the sour one, it's originally from Kurdistan. Those are the 2 origins of the ones that we're making today, but everywhere in that area of the world, you can find a different kind of Kubbeh soup. And also every single place in that world is going to convince you that they're the ones who made up Kubbeh, that it's theirs original. But nobody really knows where it came from exactly. The only thing that we do know is that many years ago, there was a very famous route that basically crossed the entire world called the Silk Route. And that route was basically to take different things from the East to the rest of the world. So if it was silk from China or spices from India, all sorts of things that they brought to the rest of the world. And hang on, we'll put this on the table over here so that you can see. There we go. So one of the things that was brought kind of by accident through the Silk Route was that in China, people there eat, they eat different kinds of noodles that are stuffed with things. Basically, I think what they call dim sum now. And the merchants who came from China and they stopped at different places along their route, they taught people about the food they ate. And every place kind of adapted their own way of making these dumplings that they would have. So let's say in North Africa, the dumplings turned into Kubbeh because that was the easiest kind of flour that they had accessible. In Eastern Europe, they turned into what we know as kreplach. And there are different kinds of kreplach basically from every different region and every different place in Eastern Europe. They even got all the way to Italy, where in Italy we know that there's ravioli and things that are stuffed. So really, if you want, you can say the origin of it is China, but even though it's very, very different than what they eat in China. But this is where Kubbeh came from. So what we're going to do now is, before we continue, we're going to make the dough for the kubbeh using, like I said before, I'll repeat for whoever didn't hear me. We're going to be using semolina. Semolina is basically, I wish I could explain more to you. It's made from wheat as well. It's made in a different way than flour is made, though. It's called solet in Hebrew. There used to be a korban mincha that was brought using solet in the Beit HaMikdash. And so we're going to take this solet. It's something that they use in Israel for making all kinds of things. Here it was kind of hard to find, but we got lucky. We're going to take the solet. We're going to take the semolina that we have, and let's put it down on the table. Okay, perfect. We're going to measure out 3 cups. Hold on. We're going to measure out 3 cups of semolina. לא, אני צריכה זה מים. אתה יכול לפתוח כל זה השני. We just have to open up the other bag. Okay. All right. We're going to open the bag. And we're going to measure 3 cups of this. Here's 1 and 2. That's 2, and now for the 3rd one.
Why?
Oh, that's not too bad. Okay, 3 cups. We're going to take some salt as well.
Cooking class. Oh, it's freezing.
We're going to take some salt right over here. We're going to put it in and just stir it up a little bit. And now we're going to start adding water. Now, we could give you an exact measurement, but I don't know exactly how much water goes in it. But we're going to start with 1 cup, and we'll see how it goes from there. You'll see what it looks like also, how it needs to look. We're going to pour it in and start mixing it up together. Here, we definitely need more water, so we're going to get another cup now. We're going to start adding a little bit of thyme.
Right?
Yeah,
This is done, you must come to bed, eh?
yeah. What about the washing up?
Here, we're going to keep adding water. We just added another ½ cup. We're going to add another ½ cup and see if it gets to the right consistency. Let's see.
And I think that's like in general a big problem is the Sephardic cooking measurement. When you ask them, but how do you make this kubbeh, like exactly how much sugar or like salt you put? They just like answer you, kacha, like just take your fist and put like this. That's the problem. You never know how to do it like exactly like a real Sephardi. So it's the 2 real Ashkenazim from Russia and Germany, I think, like originally. Yeah. Let's see how the kubbeh will be.
Okay, so here is the consistency we want it to be right now. It's pretty watery right now. It's almost like porridge. But we're going to let it sit now for like 10, 15 minutes while we make the filling for the kubbeh. And while we let it sit, it's going to get more firm, more hard. And then we are going to be able to, then once it gets more hard, we're going to be able to work with it. If by the time we're ready to work with it, it's not yet firm enough, what we can just do is add a little bit more semolina into the mix. And the same also goes that if it's too hard and it's like crumbly and dry, we can just add some more water by the time we start working with it. Okay, so now we are going to start making the filling for the kubbeh. And while we're making the filling now, Ori is going to add water into the pots until they are, he's going to add the water like a couple of inches above the vegetables that are in the pot. Ori is going to start adding water to the pots of soup so that they can really start cooking more. And we are going to be making our filling right now. So for the filling, hang on, we're going to move the computer back to where it's more comfortable. Right over here. We're going to be moving the computer like that. And we're going to start with the filling. So, can you take that screen a little bit down? Thank you. Okay, great. For the filling, we have ground beef, about a pound. We're going to take that, open it up. And we are going to put the ground beef into any kind of bowl, container, anything you want to mix with. We are going to add minced garlic, a nice big spoon. We're going to put that in and put in another nice big spoon too, if you like it garlicky. We are going to add about 2 teaspoons or a teaspoon of salt. We're going to add them in here now. And also a little bit of pepper. We are going to add paprika. And the one last thing we're going to add is a spice that we brought with us from Israel. It's called Baharat. It's a mix of all kinds of different spices. You can get it at any spice store in Israel, even in the supermarket, they sell it packaged. I don't know exactly what's in it. I know there's cinnamon from the way it smells. I know that there is, there's cardamom, I think, all kinds of things. But it's a really good one. If you have anybody coming from Israel, once people can fly, then definitely a good thing to get. So we're gonna just add like a teaspoon of that in here. And we have our diced onion that we have from before. We're gonna add that in too. And last but not least, we have cilantro and parsley that are chopped up already over here. We're going to just take a handful of that and add it in as well. And while I mix this, Ori is also, we forgot to add in the soup that's going to be the lemon thyme. Ori is going to add in about half a bag of spinach leaves. Better to add them in before you add the water, but we forgot to, so we'll add it in after, and I'm sure it'll be fun. Right now, I'm going to mix up the meat and with all the stuff that we put into it. We're going to mix it all together. Let's see. That's a second. زي ما السلك؟ لا the other one. We're mixing up all the meat, and you want to get it really mixed up so that all of the different spices are mixed in, and all of the onion and the different greens that we put in are also all mixed up. All the garlic, you want it to be really good so that you don't get, one kubbeh that has nothing in it and one that is not. So here, we're going to mix this all up. All right. So this is nice and mixed. Here's what it looks like right over there. It's all mixed together, and it is pretty much ready to go. But what's not yet ready to go is our dough for the kubbeh that we made, which is semolina. So what we're going to do is, after I wash my hands quickly, I'm just going to explain to you a little bit more about where it came from and how it got to Israel. So hold on one second. Okay. So we said that Kubbeh was, it came to be kind of because of the traders who came through the Silk Route that went from the east to the rest of the world. And like we said, it got to Northern Africa and it got to the different communities there. And every Jewish community all around the world kind of has their two signature Shabbat dishes. Well, there's three signature Shabbat dishes. One of them is challah, that in different places it's made in different ways. One of them, as everybody knows, is cholent, that is made in lots of different ways in different places. The cholent that people have in America that originated in Eastern Europe.
It's not like the cholent in Israel.
No, in Israel the cholent is called chamin, and the way they make it is that they're very careful. Every single item in the cholent is placed in a different bag, like the slow cooker bags, a separate bag for each item, and they poke holes in it so that the flavor can get through. But nothing can be mixed together. Not like the cholent that we have here that kind of turns all brown because it's all been the same cooking together for however many hours. So like every place also, they have their challah, they have their cholent, and they also have their different signature kind of soup. So chicken soup for my family for generations. But this is going to be, but this one is for really the families that came from Northern Africa to Israel. And Rabbi Gelman says that we're cholent snobs, and we definitely are. When you come to Israel, you can taste the cholent there. It's amazing. So I remember going to my friend's house, friends who are originally from Morocco and from all kinds of different places, specifically Morocco, though, because I have a lot of friends whose parents and grandparents came from there originally. And having kubbeh that their grandmothers or mothers would make, and it was so good. Not as good, like I can't make it as good as that, but it's as close as we can get. And it's really all these people, like Ori said, they don't measure. They have recipes that go for generations, and it's something that's really nice. That's really nice to have. But the Jews that came to Israel that brought these recipes with them, so they didn't always have it so easy. A lot of them, there were about 400,000 Jews living in various communities in Northern Africa before the establishment of the State of Israel. Some of them wanted to come to Israel. Some of them were persecuted in the countries they came from, and some of them were very happy where they were. A lot of them, because of decrees in the past where they weren't allowed to work as doctors and lawyers in certain times, a lot of them took up silversmithing and goldsmithing and different jobs that in the end made them become very wealthy. And when it came time for them to leave to Israel, they had to leave everything where they came from and come with nothing, which was very difficult. Another reason that was very difficult for a lot of them to come to Israel was because the Ashkenazi Jews who came from Europe, who were building up the state of Israel, were not very welcoming to them. They were different. They didn't know each other. It wasn't like today where everybody can kind of be mixed in together and everybody knows each other's customs and stuff like that. It was very different back then. In fact, it was so different that when the Jews who came and requested that they wanted to come live in Yerushalayim, when they came to Israel, the Israeli government back then told them that they were taking them to Yerushalayim and ended up taking them to different places all over Israel, especially in the south, and putting them there with nothing and saying, this is Jerusalem, welcome, and giving them a tent and having them live there. And it was, I have a friend who is from Yerucham, which is down south near Beersheba, and her grandparents both came from Morocco and were told they were being taken to Jerusalem. And they only found out about 2 months after they got to Israel that they were not in Jerusalem. They were in fact in what became Dimona afterwards. And that's like the story of it's the story of a lot of people who came to Israel. Now, Baruch Hashem, it's much better, but there are still issues of with Ashkenazim and Sfaradim in Israel. There are still issues. We also can definitely tell more about it, even from the school that he worked in.
In the school that I used to work in Israel, in Yerushalayim, there was like a nickname, like I think 85% of the school was like Sephardic from Yerushalayim, like Mitar Yerushalayim fans, and really Yerushalmi that lives there in Katamonim or in this area. And there was like a nickname, it was like Ashkenazi. Like one guy came to his friend, yeah, Ashkenazi, it's like a nerd, like someone that, you're so like Ashkenazi, like regular, like cool, like it's Sephardic. So it really depends where you locate in Israel. And also these places that Aviva explained before are called like Ma'abarot. That was the original name of these places, and that so many people from Africa came to live there. And another thing I think about Sephardim and Ashkenazim is that it is like it's like an issue that we used to say that it's an old history in Israel, because right now we're all together, we got married with Sephardim, Ashkenazim, everything is okay. But every time that we have something like in the news or something that reminds us, I think like blacks and whites in America, we see that still we have this issue. I think, for example, the Asi River.
Yeah, there's a story going now in Israel in the news. I mean, it's hard to follow the news with other things besides COVID. You just cover the pots. But there is a kibbutz that is in the north of Israel, in Emek Yisrael, in the Yisrael Valley. And there's a river that goes through the kibbutz called the Asi River. And it's a beautiful, beautiful place. It looks like paradise. This place, so when the kibbutz started many, many years ago, they built their kibbutz around the river and they closed it off so that nobody else could come in. And that's illegal in Israel right now. You can't have a body of water that is inside of a closed community without access to other people. And slowly, I think if anybody's ever been to Israel on like a Bnei Akiva trip when they were young, there's a kibbutz called Ein HaNatziv that many people know of. And in Ein HaNatziv, there's a natural spring that it's in the kibbutz, and there was a big legal issue with it. In the end, they ended up having to open it up to the public, and it was a big thing. But this one kibbutz with the Asi River, there's a big issue going on right now because legally they do have to open it up. And the people in the city of Bet She'an are demanding that they open it up and let other people come. But the people of the kibbutz are saying, no, if people come to our kibbutz, they're going to make it dirty and they're going to not take care of it. And one of the big things in this fight about coming into the water there is that the people in the kibbutz,
Kibbutz next to Ein HaNatziv.
Yeah, kibbutz next to, well, remember the name of which kibbutz it is, it just kind of slipped both of our minds right now. The people of this kibbutz are all Ashkenazi, and the people from Bet She'an who are coming and protesting outside the gate of the kibbutz are Sephardim. So it's become kind of a war between Ashkenazim and Sephardim, which you think, like, what, in our times, how is that possible? The people are still fighting about that. They're all Jewish people in the Jewish state, but it still is an issue, even though, like here, even though in Israel, it's not like you don't feel it every day. Both of us have friends who are Ashkenazi and Sephardi, and we don't think about it. We don't think about the differences. Even there are enough Sephardim in Israel at this point that the davening that everybody learns as kids is Nosach Sfarad. We learn Sephardi davening, and not Ashkenazi davening. And I know
my dad is originally from Germany.
Yeah.
Like my grandfather is from Germany, and my dad is a real Yeke. And when he was like 19 years old, he said, okay, enough with the Ashkenaz. I don't like to be all of my life in a minority. And he just moved to Sepharad. So now it's the first time that I came back to Nosach Ashkenaz. And I think that maybe like my grandfather passed away, maybe he's really happy. That's like the tikkun to my dad that left the Ashkenaz. And again, that's grandchild that goes again to the Nosach Ashkenaz.
For sure, for sure. So it's definitely an issue. But one thing that everyone can agree on, hands down, is that the Sephardim in Israel have better food than the Ashkenazis.
Yeah, that's for sure.
That's for sure. When you ask like if Sephardim, when you ask them, you know, what their dishes are that they have, they can tell you names of like 10 different amazingly delicious things that are all different. Some are fried, some are baked, some are cooked, some are boiled. Everything's different. And when you ask Ashkenazim what they have, it's either like matzo balls, or gefilte fish. And gefilte fish in Israel is like considered a curse word practically.
Yeah.
People won't talk about it. They won't. It's not something that we can use. Okay, so we're gonna check the dough now. Here's the dough for the kubbeh. It's still a little bit. Here, I'm gonna show you. It's still a little bit too soft for using. So what I'm gonna do now is add more semolina. I'm gonna add some more and mix it up together.
Now we mix it.
Now everybody can see. We're mixing it up a little bit so that it's less gooey and easier to work with. All right, so we have the dough right over here. Now it's a little bit better. We're going to try using it now, and we're going to show you how to make kubbeh. So if you want to just take the screen, there we go. Okay, what we're going to do is take a ball of dough. You don't want the ball of dough to be too big. You don't want the ball of dough to be too big. Because if it's too big, then the dough around the meat is going to be too thick. And when it's too thick, it's hard to eat a little bit. So you want the ball of dough to not be too big. And the first thing also that we're going to do that I forgot to do before is I'm going to wet my hands right now, because if they're not wet, then the dough is going to be really sticky. So I'm going to wet my hands. And also, I'm going to put some plastic on the pan that we're using right now so that they don't stick to the pan. Here. So we have some plastic on our pan right over here. Hands are wet. And now we're going to take a ball of dough, flatten it out like this, take just some meat in our hands. We're going to take a little bit of meat like this, probably about like a big spoonful, I guess. Put it in the middle of the dough. And we're going to start making the dough go around the meat until it's all sealed off.
And maybe I will show you closer.
Here, we'll make another one and show it closer.
Before you put the meat, it looks like a hamburger. You just like take dough like an hamburger. And then like a meatball. Put it on below. Then just cover it.
And then once you cover it, you want it all to be covered. It's going to be all white, and like we said, it looks a little bit like a matzo ball right now. Once we have this, we're going to take this and put it down in the pan. Now we're going to make a bunch more. And what's good when you're making this is that you can make as much as you want. You can make as many as you want because they freeze really, really nicely. And you can freeze them when they're raw, and just whenever you make soup that you want, you can even add them into chicken soup. They're also really good there. When you freeze them, they're just fine. You can put them into any boiling soup that you have and cook them for about half an hour on simmer, and they'll be ready even when they're frozen. Because you didn't wet your hands. Yeah. If you don't wet your hands before you make them, then the dough is going to be really sticky. So you just want to wet them and put them in the pan. Here, we're wetting again. Here we go. We're gonna take some meat, Put it in. And you also want to make sure, there are some people that say when you're making kubbeh to make meatballs first and then roll the meatballs inside of the dough. The only problem with that is that once the kubbeh is cooked, when you cut them open, the meat kind of just rolls out of the dough. Like you don't really get to eat them together. So what I like doing is just putting in the meat just like that, like we did before. Here we go.
And the truth is that you can just find them in the supermarket. Like
Not in America.
Not in America, but
Yeah.
in Israel, you can just make the soup and add them.
You can buy frozen, but they're not as good as the real ones.
Yeah.
Here. You just want to take them each time and fill them up and close them up. And then you roll them around in your hand. Make sure that there's no filling that's showing through, that it's all white on the outside, and put it down on the pan. Here, we're going to check the soups now and see if the vegetables are soft, because this soup isn't the kind of soup that you have to cook on simmer for a long time. You only have to cook it until the vegetables are soft enough. And while Ori is making more, I am going to add seasoning into the soup because we forgot to do that, and that's pretty important if you want it to taste good. So what we're going to do is take off the tops of both. And we're going to add, hold on. Hold on one second, sorry. Okay, so first we're going to season the red kubbeh soup. Taking salt. You want to put like a nice spoon of salt into the soup, depending on the size of your pot. Since my pot is not so big, I'm going to be using just some. We're going to put that in. And, oh, okay. And we also have here tomato sauce. You can either use tomato sauce or tomato paste. I'm going to take a couple, 3 big spoonfuls of tomato sauce. If it's tomato paste, you can use less, and just stir them in. I'm also going to take some of the parsley and cilantro that we have left. I'm going to put that in as well. And we are also going to be using pepper, just plain black pepper, about a teaspoon. And paprika, you want like a nice amount of paprika, at least a couple of teaspoons of that. We're gonna put that in here. Now, let's see. We're going to just put up the flame a little bit. And now another spice that we're going to put in this one is something also that we brought in from Israel with us. But this is something that's easy to find. You can get it at HEB. It's called chawayej. Another spice mix. Another time, I wish I could tell you what's in it, but I have no idea. But it's really good. It's good in like any soup that you want to put it in. It's got like kind of a spicy flavor. It gives it like a really good smell also, the soup. And we're just going to put about a teaspoon of that into the soup, just like that. Okay, we're going to give this a stir and let it keep cooking for a little bit before we see if it's ready. And now for the second soup. We said this soup is going to be lemony, so of course we're going to be adding lemon juice. But first, we're going to add salt. We're going to add salt into the soup. We're going to add pepper. We're going to add a little bit of cumin. Here we go. We added a little bit of that. And now we, of course, are going to add lemon juice. So let me just get that. So here we have lemon juice. We're going to start with adding, it really depends how lemony you like it. I like it sort of lemony, and Ori likes it really lemony. So we're going to make it for him this time. And we're going to add some in. We're going to start adding some.
The rabbi.
The rabbi hasn't tasted it before, so whatever he, here we go. We have some in here. I'm going to see how it is. Oh yeah, that's really lemony. Okay. So that's good. Now we're just gonna check. I just need a new spoon because I tasted from that one. We're gonna take the spoon. We're gonna see if the vegetables are cooked through yet. Yeah, they're cooked enough. The vegetables, you want them to be pretty, either all the way cooked through or almost cooked through, because they're gonna cook more with the kubbeh in them. You wanna bring both soups up to a boil. This one's already boiling, the beet one. And let's see how our beet soup is doing. Hang on, I just need a bigger spoon. We're just gonna take out one of the beets and see if it's cooked through. Let's see. Okay, the beet is definitely cooked enough to be able to add kubbeh. So now that both of our soups are boiling, what we're gonna do is like this. While the soup is boiling, we have our kubbehs. This is only some of them. We're gonna have plenty more. We're gonna be able to freeze some or do, make more of them afterwards. We're gonna carefully take one. You carefully pick it up and you just plunk it into the soup. We have really little pots, but if you make a big pot, you can use a lot. We're gonna just do some in each pot right now. Let's see, we're gonna do in this one. And now once the soup is in the pot, once the kubbehs are in the pot, we're gonna turn it down to simmer and cover it. You don't have to mix it. If you mix it right now, then the kubbeh is gonna fall apart. So you just turn it on to simmer, and we're gonna set a timer now for 20 minutes. Let's see. If you don't turn the soup down to simmer, what's gonna happen is that the kubbeh is going to stick to the bottom of the pot and turn into a rock, basically. We don't want that to happen. It's really hard to clean from experience. So we're putting in some kubbehs into this pot as well. And this pot is really small, so we're only gonna do like 4 in here. And we're gonna turn it down to a simmer. And cover it up. And now they need 20 minutes. They need 20 minutes now to cook until they are ready to eat. And the best way to have them, the best way to have kubbeh is just take a bowl. You take as many kubbehs as you want from the pot with vegetables, and then you also cook some plain white rice and have them together, and you put the white rice, you can't add it into the soup directly, you have to put it on the side, and you can take like a spoonful of rice and then a spoonful of kubbeh and a little bit of rice on the spoon and then put that into the kubbeh, but don't dump the whole bowl in. That is like, it's asur. Just not allowed. I don't know why, but it's not allowed.
If you want to be like Mehadri, you can buy rice and put, and also pita. And then like with the pita rice.
With the pita rice, and then you're good for not eating for like the next 5 days.
It's like you can finish it.
Because it will close close off your stomach for a while afterwards. But it's definitely recommended to try it at least once that way.
And I think just like maybe to be optimistic, and we know we don't have flights now, but a lot of people plan to go to Israel and to visit cool places. So I think our best Kubbeh place in Israel is in the Shuk Machne Yehuda. It's called Rachmo. Rachmo, like a special restaurant that you don't come and chill and sit and like talk. You just come, eat, and go out.
You come, sometimes you sit at tables with other people who you don't know. And I mean, now, I guess now everybody's just on their phones. But you know, back in the old days, before everybody was on their phones, people would talk to each other and they would get to know each other and ask each other how their day was going. And like, it's a restaurant that you go in and you see in the back counter, they have like just these like tin pots just lined up one after the other, and one has rice and one has beans and one has chicken. And there's always at least one pot that has kubbeh and one pot that has rice, and you can always find it there.
In these kind of restaurants, I think they like made like a retro, and they were really famous in the 80s. And it's called Misedet Poalim, like
a workers' restaurant.
Because in the beginning, just people that work in the shuk came to eat there to get like hummus, pita, kubbeh, and then they moved on. But these days, if you go on a Friday to the shuk, not during coronavirus, but before like last year and hopefully next year, you can see Americans, Russians sit and eat kubbeh. And I think for me, as an Israeli, to see a Russian eat kubbeh that came from South Africa, that an Ashkenazi, North Africa, that Ashkenazi made in the shuk, that's kind of like
Kibbutz Galuyot.
Kibbutz Galuyot.
The diaspora coming back together.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think.
So we think that's it. Unless you want to hang around for 20 minutes to see how it comes out, we don't mind eating it in front of you, but it's going to be really hot when it's cooked. Does anybody have any questions? If anybody has. And if you don't have questions, hang on. Rabbi Gelman asked what it is called. I don't know what he asked about what it is called, but if you want to say it again, then we're happy to tell you. And if you don't have any questions.
If it's about the kubbeh, so again, we made like the chamutz.
The chamusta. We made the kubbeh chamusta, the sour kubbeh. And we made kubbeh stelek, the beet kubbeh. And we made the same balls of kubbeh for both kinds of soup, even though some people make different kinds, they're all the same. They just make them in different shapes sometimes. But in the end, it all tastes the same. And we put them, first we cut up the vegetables to start making the soup. Then we made the dough so that it could start sitting. This, what's left of it right over here. Afterwards, we made the meat and we started to fill the dough. And then we put them in the boiling soup and turned it down to simmer. And we are going to have kubbeh that's ready in like 20 minutes. We're happy to send everybody the recipe after. You can try it at home, or if you want to, we can leave a bowl outside for you and socially distance, enjoy kubbeh.
In every cat in the neighborhood.
I think Rabbi wanted to know what Hwaj was.
Oh, the yellow spice. Hawaj. It's spelled in
Hawaii.
English. It's spelled H-A-W.
You want to type it in the chat?
Yeah, I'm going to type it in the chat, and I can also say, hang on, I'm going to type it right over here. It's spelled H-A-W-A-I-J, I think. I know, though, that in H-E-B, in the kosher aisle, where they have like the Israeli products, there's a line of Israeli spices, and that was there. And I was really excited when I saw it, because now I don't have to beg someone to bring it back for me when we finish ours up.
The first one,
and the first spice also, Rabbi Yelman, I saw that you can buy it on Amazon. It's called Baharat, and it's really, really good to add to any kind of meat that you make. Like anything with ground beef, if you add a little bit of Baharat, it makes it so, so, so good. It makes it like a teeny bit sweet, but without adding sugar. I don't know, it's like special. It just makes it really good. And that was it, I think.
Thank you for joining us, and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Night. Thanks.
Good night.